You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by our co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans. We just love talking about the Pack. We are not getting into all of that national sports media nonsense that they get involved with. We are sticking to the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season, sorting through all the drama and the rumors and the draft of the offseason. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Give us a follow on those socials. Most importantly, jump on over to the YouTube channel, Packers Talk Network. Hit the search button, hit the subscribe button. Give us the follow, the little bell there for some bonus points. We greatly appreciate it. Love y'all for subscribing, listening, joining us every Monday night here at 9:30. Maybe sometimes we're a few minutes late. Just give us a little grace there. We need it. It's my fault all the time. Tim is sharp as a tack. Here we are this evening. The dust is settling a little bit on the draft. We're gonna get into, is it enough? Are we contending to be the 60th Super Bowl champion yet? But first, our show is once again sponsored by Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans, as well as Bucks, Brewers, and Summerfest tickets. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. Remember, support those local Wisconsin businesses. And if you're not in Wisconsin, support your local businesses. Tim, good evening, sir. How you doing?
Good evening, Miles. I am okay. We got through the draft, and now we're kind of in that little extra off season. I don't know what you call it. Like, this is the quiet down period, which sucks because I wish they were playing a game this Sunday. But we still will have lots to talk about from here to training camp. But yeah, it's getting quiet now.
No, it's dreaded short season. It's that time of year where we're going to see guys do stuff in shorts, and they're going to be the GOAT because of it. And we're just going to have to deal with that for a few months. But it's okay. We're going to be thirsty for some training camp. And, we did this last year. We did it the year before that. This is a quick time on the pod. It always feels like this is going to be a long, drawn-out period, and then we blink and training camp is around. So, yeah, I'm optimistic. We're going to get through this together.
We will. And, the NFL is always 365 now. So they're going to drag some things out. You get some news. The schedule comes out, I think, on the 14th. So we'll have that to talk about. And, we'll take the news from OTAs and minicamp and whatever else may be going on, contract extensions. There's a player on the team who may or may not be on the team next season that I think there is some news about that this offseason. I don't know, but maybe we get clarification between now and the start of the season. Who knows? There's always stuff to talk about. It's just we're like post-draft now, so it's kind of a quieter time, but always lots to talk about. Now we really see that this roster is mostly set, going into the off-season program and minicamp, training camp. Like, it's not going to change very much, and definitely not drastically. So we kind of are getting a feel for, who we want to see and what we want to see once training camp starts.
Yeah, we can start picking the position groups apart a little bit. Dive in who's who, where do they fit, what are we looking at here? So yeah, there's plenty to get through, but let's get into this first question we've got here, man. And it kind of leads us into the second one, but first question being, did they do enough to contend to be the 60th Super Bowl champion?
So I think they're contenders. I think they're in a group of contenders, but I still have concerns. I still have, some big concerns. And I think there's a lot of there's several things that need to go right. But there's for me, there's two main places that we can talk about. And I think it's going to determine their season, kind of like it determined last season. And that's the passing offense and the pass rush on defense. Those are the two spots. And I feel better about the passing offense, but it's like it took such a step back last season that we're hoping for, a big jump this year, but it's like, is that what it was? Like, is it going to be what it was late 2023, or is it going to be 2024? Is there a middle ground there? And there's certain aspects of their passing game on offense that I feel better about, that it's going to bounce back. It's going to improve. Like I think Jordan Love's going to be a better quarterback in 2025. I think the pass protection against the better teams, it's a pretty damn good offensive line last season, but they had trouble against Detroit and Minnesota and Philadelphia with some of the pass protection. I think they've improved their line. They've improved the depth there. I feel better about it, but I don't know what to make of the pass catchers. Like going into last year, I think we both felt pretty good about their receivers, and like we were expecting them to be damn good, like be one of the better groups in the NFL, and one or two guys to take, a substantial jump. And that never happened. Everybody was inconsistent, and if they could catch the ball, that's a great starting point, because I think the drops really killed them last year. But I think there's just a lot of unknown there. I think they did address it with obviously the two draft picks, Golden and Williams. So that helps, but that part of it, I don't know. And then defensively, the pass rush, I don't think they've done enough to improve the pass rush. I like Sorrell. I think that's a good pick in the 4th round, but I'm not going to count on a rookie 4th round pick to make a big impact. Like, I think he could be a good player for them. I think he could have a solid career, but I think it's going to take time. I can't expect an instant impact from a 4th round pick. So where's the pass rush improvement going to come from? Well, it's going to have to be the guys they already had that didn't do a good job last season. And it's going to have to be the new coach. So can a defensive line coach and internal improvement happen for the pass rush? I don't know. I don't feel good. I don't feel like they've done enough to help that spot. So that's my big hang up on defense. And then offensively, I feel better about where they are, but there's still a lot of unknown there. So to answer your question, I think they're a contender, but I don't feel confident saying right now that they're, the Super Bowl favorite, or I expect them to be in the Super Bowl or anything like that. I still think there's a few teams in the NFC that are better than them right now. And that doesn't mean anything, because we're talking in May. There's no football going on. There's no real football going on right now. So who knows what's going to happen? But there's a lot of areas and a lot of players that need to make jumps next year. And I'm not at that point where I feel confident saying like this is going to be a Super Bowl team next season.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I can't fight you on that. Pass rush is very, very important for championship teams. That's no secret. Yeah, you can't say that last year's pass rush was enough. Certainly wasn't. I think that it's very obvious. And, if you're loosely following along, you don't catch what Goot says in the offseason, we'll help you out. We try to catch those pressers. But he has a ton of confidence in the guys that are in the room. And you got to take that for what it is. He's not hiding it. He's not, trying to gaslight anybody. He's just like, I think these guys are good, and he clearly didn't think the coaching was good enough. You move on from the D-line coach, you replace him. And I would contend, and I would bet that there's at least some of this thought going on within the building, that when your D-line performs really well, it has a ripple effect to the rest of the defense. It frees up pass rushers. It frees up the off-ball linebackers. Certainly helps out the secondary, makes that clock a lot shorter. So there's a big ripple effect there. So I think there's a lot being put on Coach Covington's shoulders, and the guys that they've got in the room there. They're not bums, right? I've kind of harped on the point, but we've seen those guys play really good football. A lot of them. There's not guys in there that you're looking at going, gosh, why is this guy still hanging out? We don't have any Royce Newmans on the defensive line, I don't feel like. So that's where I look at it and go, all right, they believe in this coach. I'll believe in this coach. I'll say, okay, well, let's look at these guys and what is their higher potential that we were excited about before this kind of stinker of a last season for that group. and how do you project that onto this upcoming season? And that's where I get kind of excited about it. I'm like, yeah, these guys at their best, they should be pretty deadly. There's some good players out there. There's a lot of talent, a lot of athleticism. So I got to believe that they'll get that harnessed. They'll figure out how to better use it than they did last season. They did add a few guys to the room, right? And I think that sometimes it's not fun because, if they're not the first round, second round, flashy pick, the name that you've heard talked about on all the draft shows and all that. I'll admit we missed on Sorrell, man. Like that guy, we should have talked about him. Like when I went back and watched his film, like, wow, he's good. He's not a guy that I'm like, he should have been a first round pick, but he is a guy that you look at him like, yeah, like he's got some tools. He's got some instincts. He's got some moves. He's not just a one-trick pony when it comes to his pass rush moves. And he's got a lot of – he seems like a very instinctual player to me. So, when it comes down to guys like that, it can be easy to sort of be like, man, we didn't really add anything to the pass rush. But maybe you did, and you got to give that time to come through. We'll see that, hopefully come out. But I'll certainly offer the higher end of the optimism scale with stuff like that. I like to see that. The other thing is the intangible, and we talked about this a little bit last week with Sorrell, is, all of his teammates that were asked, apparently when they were asked, who would you want to go into the league with on the same team? And they all said Sorrell. So there's some high character stuff there. It looks like, seems like he's probably, what they call a glue guy, right? Where he kind of brings guys together a little bit. The most talented. It's not that you don't have to be the most talented to be a good glue guy. So guys like that, you gotta give some credit to it. You can't say we totally ignored the group, but I'm with you. I would have liked to have seen maybe a higher pick used on a pass rusher. But I'm optimistic that these guys know what they were going after. But yeah, I mean, for me, the answer is yes. I think it's enough. You have done enough to contend for a Super Bowl, because honestly, you weren't that far away last season from contending for a Super Bowl. So, when you think about how you played the Eagles and what your team looks like now, you have more offensive line depth. No doubt about that. For sure, there's more depth. How that depth responds in different moments, we'll see. But you have more offensive line depth. You also we'll have to look at the numbers. I would argue that you have more offensive line size now too. I think you got a little bit bigger on definitely. The O-line, and hopefully you can handle those 340-pounder guys in Philly a little bit better. But yeah, so I think that the O-line improves just overall. Arrow up on the O-line. I'm going to say arrow up on the receivers. I think you're going to get a little bit of a double benefit from these rookies. I mean, I think you're going to get some contribution from Golden and Williams, but I also think that those guys coming in and what they represent, you'll get some urgency out of the guys that are there. And we're going to find out if those guys can actually produce. And I don't think all of them are going to strike out, right? I would expect that certainly Jaden Reed, I think, will respond well. He's one that I think should have a pretty darn good season. Wicks is one. We had a lot of hope for Wicks. So if he can correct the drops, I think that's another one that he could see a lot more success this season with some space opening up on the field. The biggest question marks, obviously, Watson is sidelined for most of the season. And then Romeo Doubs. What Romeo Doubs are you going to get? Where's his head at? Is he going to have to miss another game? And physically, where's his head out? Is his concussion issue an issue? Is that going to be an ongoing thing you got to watch for? So he's one that he's probably my biggest question mark, Doubs, at this point. If Wicks can correct his drops, which we've seen guys do, Packers receivers have corrected those drops in the past, then, there's a lot of reason to believe he can return to a pretty strong form. And Reed was one of the stronger receivers at least of this first half of last season. I think with him, it's a matter of getting him correctly involved in the offense. So they've got a full off season to mess around with some of these guys, get Williams and Golden introduced, and figure out what roles are going to work for them. but I'm optimistic that the arrow is up on the offense. You're scoring more points this season. I'm just going to say that. We'll just encapsulate it that way. And obviously you have one of the better run games in the NFL, which is certainly a requirement to be a Super Bowl contender, I would say. When you look at your defense, I think you have the potential. Now hold up. I'm gonna throw bold takes out here. I think this defense has the potential to be the best defense in the league this season. Best defense in the league this season.
That's bold. I don't
Potential.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they
bold.
will be. I'm not doing any guarantees. I think they absolutely have the potential to be the best defense in the league this season. I think you have leadership in the right areas, and I'm personally projecting success with a very specific player in that projection. But you have maybe one of the best linebackers in the league emerging in Edgerrin Cooper, right? I think there's a lot of people that are very excited about his potential. Certainly one of the best safeties in the league in Xavier McKinney, and very strong leadership, I think, through the middle of that defense. Safety unit strong, nickel unit strong. We're just going to call it nickel unit, right? Because you can kind of have Bullard swing in there. You might have Nixon swing in there. I don't know what they're going to do with Hobbs. So just we're going to say nickel unit. And Micah Robinson, one of the draft picks, I think he might contribute earlier. He might threaten Kalen King for a roster, that final spot. I was watching a little his tape. Man, does he have a quick response. When he recognizes the play, he's almost faster to it than the offense. It's very impressive. So he's going to be a fun one to watch, and I think that nickel spot specifically could be one that he competes at. But yeah, I think that you have a lot of competition here. And so here's my glue for my bold prediction here. Jaire Alexander is going to return to all pro form, and he's going to play every single game. Boom. And if he does, this ends up being one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the league this season. So take that.
That's bold. I don't know what you're
I'm drinking coffee.
Okay.
This is coffee.
Okay. I was going to say, what do you got going on over there tonight? Yeah, that's bold. I mean, that's great, but I hope you're right. I don't see it, but I hope you're right. That would be great. Everything you're saying. Yeah, I like parts of their defense. I keep coming back to the pass rush. I don't think they've done enough. And if we hope that Gary can get better and Kenny Clark plays better second year in this defense, yeah, I could see that, sure. But what are we getting out of Lucas Van Ness and Devontae Wyatt? And then am I counting on Brenton Cox? Like, he was okay, once he got more snaps after they traded Preston. But yeah, you're counting on a lot of guys that just haven't shown it to you, or just shown you some flashes of it, but like nothing near completeness. So that's what scares me. The cornerbacks, and we'll get into this too, but I think they need depth at cornerback at least. Like, they need guys, whether Jaire's back or not, because Jaire hasn't been healthy. So even if he's back, I don't think you can just say, hey, he's back, we're good with depth. No, you need to get another guy there, because he very well might not be available for half the season. I like Hobbs, and I think that adds to their secondary. I think that I feel better about their cornerback room. And if they had a pass rush, I feel a lot better about it. So a full season Edgerrin Cooper is going to be really fun to watch. There's things I really like about the defense. Hafley was a great hire. Second year in his system, what he decides to do, where he decides to take this defense is going to be really interesting and exciting to see. I just keep coming back to the lack of a pass rush as something that is holding me back from being too excited about where they can go defensively. And then, offensively, that receiver room, there's a lot of talent. And, I think some of those guys, I expect Jaden Reed to bounce back. Dobbs and Wicks, I don't know. Wicks certainly has ability, but he had drop issues in college, and he's bringing them into the pros now. So, yeah, if he can clean it up, and guys have in the past, but maybe he's one of those guys that never does, right? And I like Dobbs. I'm concerned about his concussions that he's had, but he's apparently cleared. He's there. He's going. So I can't worry about that, right? I think what you get in Dobbs is a solid receiver. Can he be more than that? We'll see. And Golden, the way the NFL is now, you can get instant impact receivers. That wasn't the case before, but the game's changed a lot. A lot of receivers do come in and have an impact, and I think Golden can and will. So yeah, I feel better right now about their receiver room, but there's still a lot of questions there, based on what they did on the field in 2024. So I think I think the offensively, I'm counting on them being an improved team. I think Jordan Love is the key to it, and I think he's going to be better. I think he'll be more consistent. Not that he was bad or anything last year, but he never saw that level of play that we saw in 2023. Like, that never was there, or it was there for a game and then it was not there. And I know he played through an injury and that was a big factor. But at times you need it better from him. And there were a ton of drop passes. I get all that, but you need your quarterback to be a little better. And I think he will be. And I think the receivers, some of them I feel confident in. So I'm more confident in the passing game bouncing back than I am with the pass rush. And if you can do that, if your quarterback's really good, that can cover up and a lot of other things and make your team so much better. So yeah, I love your optimism. I can't get to number one defense with you, but would love to see it, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't love to see the Pack have the number one defense? Come on now. But what Hafley accomplished in his first season as defensive coordinator is impressive.
Yeah.
It's certainly not outside of his reach, I don't think, as a coordinator. But yeah, I mean, that's projecting, steps forward in very key places for sure,
Yeah, and when you consider Hafley, he didn't have a consistent pass rush all year, and he had, shortcomings at cornerback, let's say, and they still were a much improved defense. So, and it's interesting too to go back. I think LaFleur at the end of the season said something like, "We didn't expect to do some of the blitzing they did and play the way they wanted to. They kind of played a different style because of not getting the pass rush, having Jair out of the lineup, and having to play guys like Eric Stokes at cornerback. So they kind of changed it, and it worked for him. And it seemed like he wanted to go back to that. And then he made a comment after the draft is like, we think we found some stuff doing that last season that maybe that's going to be more of who they are going forward than what they originally thought. So I think that's interesting to see kind of how this defense is going to evolve and, what changes, but also what they're going to keep, what they really found out about themselves and their personnel and how Hafley wanted to use everybody last season.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I expect him to build on that. But it's interesting when you think about where they've got talent. Their safeties are deep. You got to figure out a way to get certain guys on the field now. Evan Williams, you got to get on the field. You got Xavier McKinney out there all the time. Obviously, you got Bullard. You're going to get out there. I mean, they're deep in some places, and so I look forward to the creativity he can have with those guys on defense. And that's one of the reasons that I get confidence in projecting that. Is I think that they will have enough depth in certain areas to make up for their shortcomings in other areas. Whereas I don't think you could say that about a lot of previous Packers defenses. So yeah, I mean, you need a guy like LVN to take a big step forward. And it sounds like they really expect him to, and he's a fantastic athlete. His nickname's Hercules, for crying out loud. If that guy comes into his potential and turns into, like a Bosa brother or something, whatever his upward potential would be. Yeah, now you're talking about this pass rush a little bit differently. Same thing can be said with Rashawn Gary, who, at one point was he had a very impressive, pass rush win rate, kind of a mouthful. I'll make sure I say that right. Very impressive pass rush win rate at one point. And then that he had a less than stellar last season as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and expect guys that had a down season last year to continue to have a down season. I don't think that it's a fair thing to expect. Now, that's a different conversation than do you expect a guy who gets hurt all the time to get hurt again? I think that we've seen these guys play good football. I expect them to play good football again. And I think there was probably some factors that limited them in that last season, but they still weren't terrible, right? Like we're talking about this as, there's some, the pass rush, I guess, is an obvious weakness we can talk about in a place you want to improve. But they, we're far from the worst in the league. They're not, just awful. We didn't get destroyed and embarrassed. In fact, the defense was the strength of the team against the Eagles in that loss. So, I mean, yeah, I guess we got to keep everything into perspective. But that's where I say, like, man, they weren't terrible last season. There was definitely room for improvement. But if you get that improvement from these guys that you have, and then just moderate contribution from guys like Sorrell or even Oliver, then you're in pretty good shape. It's not like you got to take this quantum leap to get there. I think they're really not far. And I think that those improvements are within their reach for sure. So, okay, we're a little bit divided on that. I'm cool with that. It's the middle of the offseason. We should all disagree about things. It's more fun that way. But that said, let's be realistic now. We have, a few months, 3 months roughly of offseason left. What's another move you're making? Like, is there a move you can still make, you think, on the board? Are there any free agents flying under the radar? We got Isaiah Simmons. I forgot to bring him up. He's a linebacker, but he's going to contribute to the secondary. They just bring him in last week. But are there other moves that can be made, Tim?
There's some guys out there. There's nobody that like really is going to make, most likely, shouldn't say that. You never know, but I don't expect anybody that they sign from this point between now and training camp to come in and like make a huge impact on the team next season. Like I just don't.
There's no Devondre Campbell out there right now.
No, but you never know. Like you could think that, and then you get some diamond in the rough, and you put him on the team, and he fits his role, and all of a sudden, you found something there. So it's possible. There's just not very many players available, but the positions I would be looking at, I think they could use another cornerback just for depth. Your Corey Ballantyne kind of cornerback that can be your, fourth or fifth corner and play special teams and give you that valuable depth. Now, maybe that's the draft pick Robinson, maybe that's Kalen King or Hayden, who was on the practice squad last year. But I think they need an outside player, a veteran player, and even if Jair's back or not, counting on him to play a full season you're taking a huge risk with that. Hobbs has had some injuries with the Raiders too. So I think you need a depth guy at corner, and that's the one that stands out. And then, I've been talking about it a lot tonight, pass rush. If there's a pass rusher out there that can help you, but at this point there's not. And I know Trey Hendrickson's situation with Cincinnati is still unresolved, but it doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. Right. It just seems a matter of time until they work something out with the contract there. So I don't think that's realistic. But if somehow a pass rusher came available, they should jump at that opportunity. But more realistically, I think if they could add somebody else to the cornerback room, that would help a lot.
Okay. Yeah, and there might be, again, this is kind of hard to predict, right? This is when it comes to guys that they would add at this time of year, it's very tough to predict. Rasul Douglas is still out there. I think he's one that would be kind
done.
of. Oh, is he done?
Well, he's out there, but he was bad last year at Buffalo.
He was bad. I hear you. But in terms of a guy who could fit in and know some of the guys there and, be kind of a stopgap in an emergency situation. He's only 20. I guess he's almost 30 years old, 29 and a half years old. You never know what contributes to that. Was there injuries? What it was? I don't know. But he's out there. That's a name that I know a lot of folks have floated around. Asante Samuel Jr. Still out there. Mike Hilton out there as well. He was with the Bengals. He's 31. Asante Samuel Jr. is one of those that fits the mold as far as what Goot would do. He's 25 years old.
But I think he has an injury, which cost him a lot.
Oh, is it an injury that's keeping him unsigned?
It's an injury, and he's 25. Somebody would have signed him.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that situation. I'm just looking at the list right now. But yeah, so there's a couple of names out there. Stephon Gilmore's still out there. I don't know how well he fits into what the Packers. He's almost 35 years old too, so I don't know if that would happen. But there's, as far as corners go, there's a few. There's something there. There's less edge players. You got to go further down the list to find some edge players. Maybe like a Carl Lawson. He was with the Cowboys last season. Didn't appear to have a great season, but he's still in his 20s. Well, barely. He's almost 30. Never mind. Gosh, there's just not a ton here. Let me see if I'm going to filter this out.
Yeah, I mean, they might get some guys get cut loose now. This is kind of that kind of time of season where teams are figuring out their rosters post draft. You might get somebody. You also sometimes see guys get cut right before training camp. So maybe somebody pops loose and they bring them in right at the start of camp. That's possible. But yeah, there's not much out there. And it's, just the fact that Simmons was still out there at the time was, interesting, I guess, or he was one of the few guys that was out there. But I think that was a smart move to bring him in for depth.
Yeah, so it's tough to say if I don't know. I don't know that there's. I mean, obviously, whenever they brought Devondre Campbell in, nobody knew who the heck he was. He was just a guy. And then he had a heck of a season, and then we all know the rest of the story. But it really doesn't seem like there's any real splash plays to be made short of a trade. And I think a lot of the trade potential has been explored at this point. It's very interesting, the lack of trades in the draft this year, the fact that the Packers themselves stuck to their picks a lot. And it sounded like there was a lack of willingness to trade amongst some teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things Goody said was like they had some trade offers in the first round, but they like Golden more than those trades, which, okay, fine. If you like him more than that, that's your guy, he's on the top of your board. Okay, I can understand that. But then I think he said a second, I don't know if he was talking third day. I think he was talking about the second day. So the second and third rounds, he said their phone wasn't ringing. Like they didn't have that opportunity to make a trade and they stuck where they were at. So I was surprised they only, didn't move at all. They stuck where they were at. They took their 8 guys. I definitely thought they would end up with, 9 or 10 players after a trade back or two. So yeah, that was surprising.
Yeah, so it's just I felt like this was a very interesting draft. I felt like it was very uncertain, who's what and who's going where and who values who, how, and all that kind of stuff. And there's some speculation about, well, why don't you get a backup quarterback? And I think R. Showers, good to see you. I believe you brought that up. We'll get back to that in just a second. I think that there's also some peeking at next year's class going on, where you say, all right, let's get what we can out of this year's class, be it free agents or draft class. And then, maybe there's a lot more options next year to bring in a backup quarterback that you want to work with. Or, maybe you're saying, let's make do this year with edge rushers, see what we've got and the guys we've got. And then there's a crop next year. And again, I haven't even looked, but maybe there's a crop next year that's deep. That they're looking forward to and can say, all right, well, if this doesn't work out, then we can replace them. Or if it does work out, you can still bring in replacements for future build up, because that seems to be how they do it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, right? I think as fans, we tend to look at things in a little bit more of an immediate perspective, and there's a lot more going on than that. And I don't know the money thing too, like how much money is allocated to pass rushers right now. I know Rashawn Gary's contract's pretty nice. Maybe they're trying to limit how much money they're paying people there, and I don't know. There's a lot of factors. So
they got a lot of free agents coming up at the end of next season, so they have decisions to make, and that's one of the things we may see now between that here and training camp is they might get some extensions done. Zach Tom, maybe his extension gets done, so. They're in good shape right now cap wise, but like going into next year, there's a lot of things, a lot of balls up in the air right now with the pending free agents and making decisions on those guys. So yeah, we'll see. And I think you're talking about the draft. I think a lot of their draft, like it was future planning, like they have 3 starting offensive linemen that are going to be free agents. Now, hopefully Tom gets extended. They also probably are going to make a decision in the next year or two on Elton Jenkins' contract. So you bring back you bring Belton in, and you sign Banks, and you have Jordan Morgan from last year. Like you got your guys for 2026, right? The receivers, Dobbs and Watson's contracts are up after 25, and then after 26, Reed and Wicks are up. So that you fill into receivers, like you're kind of filling those spots and giving you depth so that you're not forced to make those moves going forward. So I think a lot of this draft was the way the Packers do it. They're not drafting guys for immediate, success, immediate, like going to get on the field and help us. Like they know the draft is a long-term investment, but I think they did a lot of future planning with these draft picks.
I think so too. I think that's really what it was about. You're looking forward and again, you can only do so much with a class, if there's certain positions that you overlook this year, and a corner was one of them. And we talked about it throughout the process. I was kind of looking for more to be excited about from the corner class this year, and it just wasn't, and then one of the so-called best in the class slid, pretty deep. So I just think this was not the greatest class for certain positions, and that'll play itself out. Somebody will be right or wrong about that. But yeah, I think that's probably the way the Packers are looking at it, though, is like make do with what we can right now. I'm happy, that's where Goot's doubling down. I'm happy with our pass rushers. I'm happy with the guys in the room. I think we got it. So, okay, go get your extensions done and, secure some of these guys, keep the foundation stable, make your decisions on who you're going to move on from. And then, next season, continue to build around that. And I think, you're taking, in doing it that way, you're taking smaller steps towards maturity, right? Instead of being the youngest team in the league and then growing to be the oldest team in the league, right? You're taking almost those slow steps towards that. So you're never, hopefully, at least in this pattern that they're in, you're never the oldest or the youngest team in the league.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's a balance between fixing the problems you have and building for the future. And I think a lot of us, we want them to fix the problems that they have. And that's just not necessarily always the priority, or maybe the problem is different the way they see it. Like we say, we think, we could talk about Jair, what's going to happen there. We can talk about the cornerback room. We can talk about the pass rushers. But if they see it differently, then that is what it is, take it. But yeah, as far as like what other moves are you making? I don't think there's another move to be made on the offense. I think on the offense right now, you got a lot of guys, a lot of competition. Every position has depth, competition, high potential. Very, very excited about the offense. I don't think there's another move to be made there. Can't wait to see who comes out of the O-line competition specifically. On the defense, I think if you're going to add somebody, just based on what I'm looking at on this list, whether it be a corner or a pass rusher, because I think those are the two areas you can add to, it'd probably have to be something in a trade, and maybe that's something where we don't know what they're working on with Jair right now. They talk about working towards a resolution. Who knows what that looks like, what it is, how long it is. Is it this season? And then we'll let you go where you want to go next season, whatever. I don't know. But that's going to play into it as well. So I think if you get to a point that's unresolvable with Jair, give him a chance to pick his destination like they've done for other guys, right? They've, they sent Preston off to Pittsburgh. You send Devontae off to Las Vegas. They give guys a chance to go to a place that can be good for them. Who knows what that is? And if that team is interested in bringing them in, if they've got a player maybe kind of equal high value, some question marks, you want to trade those problems for, that those things exist, right? And there's just too many combinations to try to speak through them all right now. But that's what I would look for. I would look for like some type of fair player for player swap where it's sort of you don't get picks involved, so it's not as objective to evaluate. It just kind of depends on what the players do, from that trade on to see who got the win. But honestly, the way that this has played out this offseason, I'd say nothing's going to happen. You know, where you think that they'd make moves, they've really kind of sat still. You know, signed a couple free agents. I can't beat them up for not making more free agent moves. I like the moderate play there. But yeah, it just feels like kind of a slower or a lower move off season. I don't know why, but
yeah, but I think they feel I think they feel really good about the roster they have. Like they can go and play a game.
He said that so many times. Yeah,
right. They can go play a game tomorrow, where they didn't need to draft to like fill an immediate need for a starter, right? Like they have their lineup and they can go and play a game and be fine, and have starters, have depth guys behind them, and now you're adding a draft class to that. So yeah, I think part of the, maybe I don't want to say quieter, but like lower key moves was just like nobody was expecting a guard. People probably expecting corners, but not that corner, right? It wasn't big names like McKinney and Jacobs. So I think that's part of it, but I think they were still pretty active. I also thought they'd be more active, and I thought they'd address the pass rush, but I don't think it fell right. I don't think there were that many good free agents out there overall, but especially a pass rush. And then when you consider Khalil Mack didn't even get to the market, Chase Young didn't get to the market. I don't know if they would have been interested in either one of them. Maybe they wouldn't have, but like take those guys off. There just weren't very many pass rushers, right? Like there weren't many good free agents. So like, should they just toss money around because they have cap space? No.
That's how they got in trouble before.
Right. Like you do what you do, or you go and get the players you like. And if the guys aren't out there, if there's not enough players that you like, then you don't just throw money at somebody to just sign a pass rusher because, you think you need one. Obviously they don't think they need one, but if you did, you don't just sign one to sign one. Like it's got to be the right player, the right fit.
Right.
So it didn't work out for him. But yeah, to go back to your point, I don't really think there's a guy out there right now that's available that they can go get that would really, that they're probably interested in. Maybe there's some low level, free agent out there that they do, add here in the next few weeks or whatever. But I think they probably feel pretty good about the roster at this point, and they're fine with it. I still think cornerback depth is, maybe we see them bring somebody in there, but I don't know who that is right now. And that might be something that they address during camp or at cut down time when a lot more players are available. So I think they feel good about the roster. I think it's pretty much set for training camp.
It does seem like there's more cornerbacks available on the market that would at least make some sense than edge rushers. Again, you got at least Rasul Douglas, who could step in and be competent and be a stopgap. I don't know what the injury story is on Samuel. You got Mike Hilton, who he actually is not bad. He's had a fairly consistent few seasons there.
Hilton's just a slot guy, and like they have plenty of slot guys.
That's true. They do.
Okay,
I didn't realize that. Okay, one of the best slot. There you go. One of the best slot defenders in the past decade.
Yeah.
So and it depends also like who gets hurt, right? So yeah, you got a lot of slot guys. Maybe one of those slot guys can slide out to the outside if he needs to, and you bring in a Mike Hilton to fill that gap. I think it seems like there's more moves to be made at cornerback than edge for sure. But again, you never know when one of those player for player trades could come up. A good relationship trade between it, like a John Schneider and Goody. You just never know. That kind of stuff is probably, that's this time of year, right? It's now to training camp that those types of deals go down, where both sides have a good idea who the players are and how they evaluate them, and they're just happy to trade problems or trade upsides. That's what I would look for. And then, again, go through all the rosters and start combing and take your pick. I don't know. But it just doesn't seem like there's a ton of moves that are out there to be made.
No.
So that said, hang on a second. According to, okay, there's my, gosh, man, you can't find your mouse. Everything melts down. So we've talked around this, and I just wanted to have a little fun with this topic in light of our little debate we had last week. But Jair watch. Aaron Nagler said he wasn't going to do it, so I figure somebody needs to. And I thought we had a very good debate last week on this. I thought it was good points made on both sides. But yeah, since then there was a little chatter, and I think chatter has a way of deciding whether it's positive or negative on its own, whether it is or not. So there's more chatter about Jair, and this time people started deciding that it was, it means he's going to stay. I'm on the he's going to stay train, and I don't know that the stuff we heard this last week means anything more than before last week. You know what I mean? So I'll turn it to you. Are you has your meter moved at all? Right? Are you any more confident that he's staying, or are you still the same percentage confident he's going?
So, I think there's a better chance now than I did a few weeks ago. Or even last week,
or that he
stays. That he stays. I think there's a slightly better chance.
Your meter moved a little. Okay.
Yeah, and so this is what I think right now of the situation. I don't want to get into the debate. We had our debate.
No, we did. Yep.
This is just like my thought on where this thing's headed. At this point, like they wanted to move him. That was kind of clear by Goody's comments, where he said, if we're going to move him, we want value for him. Mm-hmm. They didn't get a trade. Or some of the reporting was that they had a team or two interested, but he wouldn't redo his contract. So those teams were out. Okay, so they couldn't move him. Draft's over. He's still here. So now, like, they can, whether it's whoever went to whoever, they're talking with the agent, like, okay, you're still here. We could either cut you, or you could take a pay cut and stay with us. And maybe the Packers are now more willing, like, we don't want to get rid of this. We don't want to cut him and get nothing for him. So maybe there's a way to keep him. And on the flip side, for Jair and his agent, it's like, okay, we're now after the draft. Like, the money's gone in free agency. Like, you're not going to go out there and get more money than what you're going to make here in Green Bay. Like, yeah, you can go out and pick a team, and he'll probably end up in Minnesota or Chicago, but you're not going to make what you can make if you stay in Green Bay. And hell, you can stay in Green Bay and take a little bit of a pay cut and then hit free agency next year. And maybe then you get a big payday. So I think what maybe they could do is cut down his base salary, and then whatever he's getting taken off his base salary then becomes a bonus that's based on playing time, how many games he's available for that he could make back. Maybe that's a way to, figure this out and make it work. I don't know. I also think there's a chance that, like, that report going out was like kind of the Packers putting it out there, like, hey, we might bring him back, to try to get like more teams like, oh, let's make the Packers an offer to get this guy, because now maybe they will bring him back and we can't count on signing him once they cut him. Maybe that's part of it. But I think there's a way to bring him back, and it's just he's going to have to adjust his contract. And is he willing, and is his agent willing to, work with the Packers to do that? So I feel slightly better, but I'm kind of at the point where, like, he's either going to be back or he's not. Like, just
get on with it.
Just get on with it, right? Like, just get on.
I think your assessment there is largely accurate. I think he's on the trade block. Maybe you got some interest, but not quite what you wanted to pull the trigger. And you have to think about the other side of it. With Jair, I think he's a pretty self-aware dude, and he's got to understand that the last two seasons have more question marks than answers, right? Because of injury. And not that that's like oh man, you stink now, so you'll never play again thing. But it's, if you want to go on the market and bet on yourself, now's not the time. Stock's down, dude. Don't go out and bet on yourself when stock is down. That's not when you do it. You need to get back out there with the guys you're most comfortable with already anyway, and show teams who you are. And then maybe that conversation with Green Bay next year is different. But if it's not, all right, cool. Well, maybe Green Bay can get what they want for him, or they'll give him his release, whatever it may be. The idea of releasing an all-pro cornerback to me is just ridiculous. I can't get over that. But I think it's in the player's best interest to definitely get on the field and show teams that you're still that dude, so that you can go off and either get paid or play where you want, whatever your motive is. You're much more likely to achieve it if you can show guys and teams that you can still play and stay on the field. So his best opportunity to do that, to me, seems to be with the Packers. You're already with the Packers, and you hear these guys talk about it. Carrington Valentine did a little draft interview, and they asked him about him, and they sound like they're very close off the field. You heard Jordan Love say that that's his guy. Got to have him back. I don't think there's a single player on this team that doesn't want to see the guy back, but they're also all kind of half in, like, yeah, that's his thing. We'll see. Like none of them are like, oh yeah, I talked to him. He's coming back. Done deal. So like, then that was one of your points last week in this, is that when asked about a player that is coming back, it's easy to be like, yep, can't wait for him to be back. Hope he's, like almost the way that LaFleur responded about Christian Watson. Oh, he's a freak. It's in a good way. He's doing what he does. Can't wait to have him back. So yeah, I think it's fair to acknowledge that there's something there, and what is it, right? Because that's what's been unclear the whole time. And it's easy to say it's money, but it doesn't seem like that's what it is. Jaire's never said that. That's never really been brought up. Even in Goot's comments, it's really, it's never been about, well, the player wants too much, or, we're all that. I think it's just about the player probably still believes he's an all-pro at the top of his game, and the team's like, yeah, dude, that was 2 years ago, so can you show us? And I think to your point, there is that handshake of, yeah, let me show you, and then we'll see where it ends up next season if he's able to do that. But yeah, so I have been team stay this whole time, pretty confident that he will. Although, like I said, this last week, the stuff that happened, I can't say that really moved the needle for me. It just sounded like chatter. Something leaked from the Packers or from an agent or whatever, sides trying to push each other. But I do think that he, you can't write the guy off. I know a lot of, and I know you want to, Tim, and we're not getting back in the debate, but where I come from is it's like, if he's healthy, you got to have that. And your room needs it. The cornerback room needs it. Clearly there's guys there that like the guy. I don't think anybody's ever accused of him of being a bad film room guy or anything like that. He studies. I think if you can come to that handshake agreement, you need him in that room, because it gets thin after that. It does.
So wait a sec. I don't want to get in the debate, but like, I'm not trying to I don't want to write him off. Like, I'm done with him. I just think that that's kind of been the Packers' perspective because of the injuries and because of what his contract is. Like,
fair
that's
enough.
kind of the way. So like, if they can work something out and he comes back, cool. I'm down with it. But I'm going to keep realistic expectations of, even if he's back, like, he's back, but how many games is he going to play? Like,
that's the question that has to be answered.
All right, I'm not going into it thinking this is going to be the pre-2021 Jaire, before he started having the string of injuries. Like, sure. My feeling would be like, hey, whatever he gives us, cool. Hopefully it's at a really good level, though I can't even really count on that because I don't think he's at the level he was before. But like, if he's there, great. But let's still have some depth there at cornerback, because there's a good chance he's going to miss time. But yeah,
I think that's evident that they acknowledge that through the Hobbs signing.
Right, and that's good. I like the Hobbs signing. He's one of the guys, and we'll talk about this as we go through the offseason, but he's one of the guys I'm most excited to see, is like where they're playing him, but also how he fits this defense as Hobbs. So yeah, my feelings with Jaire's, it was interesting that came out last week, and it's from Demoski, so he's either getting it from somebody inside the building or the agent directly. It's not like he's not making something up or not. This is what I heard from somebody else. Like, he's getting it directly from somebody. So yeah, it made me feel like a little bit more like there's a possibility he's back, but it still could go either way. He could be out the door, he could be back. Like, who knows? And I hope it's resolved soon, but there's a chance we're talking about this all summer until training camp.
I don't think we will be. I think it'll get
I
resolved
don't
soon.
think so either.
Because I don't think it's that difficult to resolve. And I do think it's still similar to the Rodgers situation in 2021, where maybe there's disagreement, whatever, but you're both better off with him being a Green Bay Packer this season. And that's where it's like, all right, let's do that and see where we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of disagreement with Rodgers.
Right. But it's like, look, dude, you don't have leverage,
Right. And I think with Jair, it's just like, yeah, I'm sure he doesn't want to take a pay cut, but like you haven't been available to play at the level of what you're making. Like we'll give, and maybe the Packers aren't even offering this. Maybe it's just a straight pay cut. But if they can work something out where he can take a cut, but he can earn some of it back with incentives, like go ahead and
that seems like the win-win situation.
Right? You would think
if the guy's about his money and he's also wanting to bet on himself, that's the way to do it.
Right. With some agreement like, hey, this will be the last year of the contract, and then you'll be able to hit free agency the next year, or we'll pay you again. And
if it goes well, we'll offer you another contract.
Right. Or if it goes well, you're going to go cash in somewhere else. But, for right now, you're going to have to take a pay cut that you can earn some of it back. That could be the way it goes, but it's just a matter of like, do the Packers want that? And then is Jair fine with that? Is he comfortable doing that? We don't know. And hopefully we get a resolution soon.
I feel like we will. I feel like we will. It doesn't feel like a situation where egos are doing ego things. I think it's just a matter of a player wanting to bet on himself and an organization, as you're saying, measuring their risk tolerance, right? Going, So, but if that's the case, which makes a lot of sense, that's an easy one to meet in the middle on. That was the solution we talked about, right? Let's get the incentives, bring the salary down, get the incentives in there. Both sides achieve what they want to achieve. So I think hopefully that's where we go. But again, I don't think it'll be an all summer thing. I don't think we'll have too many episodes with Jair Watch.
Let's hope not.
But it is rather entertaining. And, we stash it here at the back of the episode. So if you guys are sick of it, you don't have to deal with it. You get all the good stuff on the front. But if you didn't catch our debate last week, it was pretty good. So you should go check it out.
Yes.
And before we wrap here, Tim, and we obviously, you and I are pretty good about avoiding some of these more conventional things. So we don't have a whole episode dedicated to draft grades because we're fans and what we grade doesn't matter. But how do you feel about this draft? Dust is settled. You probably got a chance to go watch some highlights of all these picks and get to know them a little bit better. We see the Savion Williams video. Oh man, I told people I want to go to Green Bay. How you feel about this class? Do you feel good about it?
I feel better about it. Yeah. And it's not that I didn't feel good about it coming out of the draft. But I feel better about it. I feel better about how these guys can potentially fit and what they can offer. Like they got some guys, obviously they all have to develop, but I really like Matthew Golden. The more I think about it, the more I see how he could potentially fit in the offense and the explosion he can add to it. The Belton pick makes a lot of sense. I'm all for stacking the offensive line, and whether he ends up at tackle or guard, whatever, give me offensive linemen to protect the quarterback. But then I think even like we mentioned Sorrell earlier, even a guy like Brinson, who they took in the 6th round, like I don't think he'll ever be like putting up these huge gaudy stats, but he can be like a rotational defensive lineman who gives you depth. He can play kind of like the TJ Slayton role, I think, against the run. And that's a nice find in the 6th round. Like I'm excited to see what he can do. So yeah, I feel pretty good about the draft. I think they got some nice players. I think they got guys that I don't know how much they're going to get contributing as rookies, and that's fine. I don't think it's going to be a huge class of like first-year rookies that make a huge impact or anything like that. But I think that
want that, right? I mean, it's great when you can have impact players, but you want them to.
We saw it last year with Evan Williams and Cooper, and even Bullard. I mean, Bullard, I know he struggled at times, but he played for him all year, and was a guy from day one that they went to and started. I don't know how much of that we're going to get this year, but I think you got guys to play specific roles and to develop down the line, and they got some big dudes. On Sorrell's a big guy, Brinson, Belton, obviously. So yeah, I feel a lot better about it. Again, not that I didn't feel good about it, initially, but being able to study these guys more in the last week or so. Yeah, I like what they did, and I like how they can fit not only for 25, but going on down the line into the future.
Yeah, I got a generally good feel about it. The golden pick goes kind of without saying. It's been talked about. We're all pretty excited about it. I don't see any naysayers. It seems like his potential is as high as it can be. So hopefully he lives up to that. Will he be Justin Jefferson? I don't know. That would be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool. Probably not, but be pretty cool. The Belton pick, yeah, again, kind of like not much to explain there. Big dude, good O lineman, good pick, makes sense. Savion Williams was one. It was probably the biggest surprise to me because it's one of those you're just like, man, we won't draft that guy, and then they do after the golden picks. You're just like, dang, wow. You got a 6'5", 225 dude who's just ready to do some crazy talented things. So yeah, that one I'm excited about. And then, going on through, I think Sorrell will be able to contribute. He actually might be, outside of Golden, he might be one of your best rookies. I think Sorrell has a chance to be one of your best rookies between him and Golden. But Brinson is one that I was looking at before we hopped on here. I was watching his tape a little bit. And you're spot on. He won't light up the stat sheet, but the things that he will do for the D-line will be very important. He is fantastic at holding the point of attack. He does not get moved easily. He can blow up gaps really well. When you're watching his highlight tape, it's not him beating a guard and tackling a quarterback. It's him beating or like holding a guard and saying, you're going to stay here while I wait for the running back to come to me. And just blowing up a gap. And that's some fun stuff to watch, but it doesn't show up very well on the stat sheet. And Stackhouse, too, just another immovable dude. So I'm very excited to see those two dudes added to that D-line rotation. I think that will be important, even though it's not a high, flashy pick. And like I said, I went back and watched Micah Robinson, too. His film is fun. He's got fun film. I think one of the knocks on him is at Tulane. He didn't really go against a lot of big time receivers, but man, he's a quick one, man. His awareness is high. So very fun to check that out. But yeah, I'm very excited about this draft class. I think it bolsters this team on both sides of the ball in very important ways, and not very sexy, but it really, I think, reinforces the foundation. So anyway, yeah, very, very excited here. We're not going to do grades. I don't know. It's not a perfect draft, but I think it's a good draft that contributes to the future. So, all right. That's it. That's this episode, guys. We don't have anything else to get into. We don't have any other signings to get into, none of that. But as we get into the offseason, we're going to start picking the position groups apart. We'll go position group by position group and just put a little microscope on there, see what kind of dark horses might be flying around out there. Get to know these guys a little bit better so that when somebody makes a play in training camp, doesn't matter what their name is, you're going to know who they are. But yeah, we always appreciate you guys coming to hang out with us every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Central. If y'all enjoyed this episode, please spike that like button for us. Share the pod with your friends. Most importantly, head on over to YouTube, type in Packers Talk Network. When you find us, hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell next to it for those bonus points. We greatly appreciate y'all for coming and hanging out with us, coming and listen, being Packers fans, skipping all the nonsense, getting to the good stuff. And we will certainly be back next week, Packers fans, Monday night, 9:30 p.m. See you then. Most importantly,